You've got to be kidding me, Mom. Jessica, my daughter's voice, cut through the living room like a knife. My daughter stood there, arms crossed, her face twisted in disbelief. Beside her, Brad, my son-in-law, actually laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A full, mocking laugh that made my stomach turn. A wedding? At your age? Jessica continued, her voice dripping with contempt. This is pathetic. You're 68 years old and you're acting like some desperate teenager. Brad leaned forward, smirking like he'd just figured out some grand conspiracy. Let me guess. He's what, unemployed? Probably saw your house and thought he hit the jackpot. I felt my hands trembling. This was supposed to be a happy announcement. The moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating for weeks. Instead, I stood in front of my own daughter, being ridiculed for daring to find love again. He's obviously using you, Jessica spat, her words hitting me like slaps. For your money? Your home? God, Mom, don't be so naive. What are we supposed to tell Emma and Lucas? That Grandma's lost her mind? If only they knew who he really was. If you've ever been judged for following your heart, you need to hear what happens next. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what my daughter discovers will leave her speechless. But before I tell you about that moment, let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone you love doubt your happiness? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Let me tell you how we got here. My name is Penny Foster. I'm 68 years old, and until that moment, I thought the hardest thing I'd ever done was burying my husband Thomas 15 years ago. I was wrong. 15 years. That's how long I'd been alone. 15 years of empty chairs at Thanksgiving dinner. 15 years of anniversaries that passed in silence, marked only by my own memories. 15 years of watching couples hold hands in the park, while I sat alone on a bench with my book, pretending I didn't notice. I was a retired elementary school teacher. For 35 years, I'd shaped young minds, tied shoelaces, dried tears, and celebrated small victories. When I retired, I thought I'd have time for myself. Time to travel, maybe. Time to enjoy my golden years with Thomas. But Thomas died 6 months after my retirement party. A sudden stroke. He was there one morning, reading the newspaper at our kitchen table, and by evening, he was gone. After that, my life became small, predictable, safe. I had my modest pension, enough to keep the bills paid and the house maintained. I had my paid-off house, the one Thomas and I bought when we were newlyweds, full of memories in every room. I had my small circle of friends, other retired teachers who understood what it meant to lose a spouse and face the years alone. And I had my daughter Jessica. Though our relationship had grown distant over the years, strained in ways I couldn't quite name. Most importantly, I had my grandchildren, Emma, 11 years old with her father's dark hair and my love of reading, and Lucas, 8 years old with boundless energy and the sweetest, most infectious smile I'd ever seen. Except I barely saw them anymore. It happened gradually, so slowly that I didn't notice at first. Jessica stopped inviting me to Sunday dinners. She said the kids had too much homework, or they had sports practice, or there was a birthday party for a friend. Always something. Then she started making excuses about holiday gatherings. Thanksgiving was just going to be small this year. Christmas morning was hectic with the kids' schedules. Easter brunch was actually at Brad's parents' house. When I asked if I could come anyway, if I could just see my grandchildren for an hour or two, Jessica gave me a look I'll never forget. Pity mixed with something else. Discomfort, maybe, or embarrassment. "Mum," she said carefully, like she was explaining something to a slow student. "You've been Different since Dad died. You're so sad all the time. The kids pick up on that energy. Emma asked me last month why Grandma always looks like she's about to cry. I think it's better if we give you some space, until you're in a better place emotionally. I told her I understood, that I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable, that maybe she was right. But the truth was, her words crushed something inside me. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. I was sad. I had been sad for years. Grief had wrapped itself around me like a heavy coat I couldn't quite take off. So I missed Lucas's 8th birthday party 3 months ago. Jessica said it was family only. As if I wasn't family. As if I wasn't his grandmother who used to read him bedtime stories and teach him how to make paper airplanes. I missed Emma's piano recital. I'd bought her that keyboard for her 9th birthday, encouraged her interest in music, and promised I'd be at every performance. But when the recital came, Jessica didn't tell me about it until the day after. Oh, Mum, I'm sorry. It completely slipped my mind. You know how busy things get. I missed soccer games and school plays and casual Sunday afternoons that used to be our tradition. I told myself it was fine, that they were busy, that I understood. But loneliness became more than just an absence. It became a presence. It sat beside me at the dinner table when I ate my simple meals for one. It followed me to bed at night, filling the space where Thomas used to sleep. It whispered in my ear that maybe Jessica was right. Maybe I was too sad, too broken, too much of a reminder of death and loss. Maybe I was the problem. I started to believe that my story was over, that I'd had my chance at love, at family, at mattering to someone. And now, at 68, the best I could hope for was to not be a burden, to fade quietly into the background, to exist without really living. And then, 18 months ago, everything changed. I had a heart attack, not a mild one. Not a warning sign my doctor could manage with medication and lifestyle changes. A massive, catastrophic heart attack that hit me while I was grocery shopping on a Tuesday afternoon in the produce section. One moment I was reaching for a bag of apples, thinking about making a pie even though there was no one to share it with. The next moment, pain exploded through my chest like nothing I'd ever experienced. It radiated down my left arm, up into my jaw, stealing my breath and my ability to think. The bag of apples fell from my hand. I heard them rolling across the floor. I tried to call for help, but the words wouldn't come. My knees buckled. And then I was on the floor. The cold linoleum pressed against my cheek. Somewhere far away, someone was screaming. It took me several seconds to realize the screaming was coming from me. People gathered around, voices talking over each other. Someone said they were calling 911. A woman in a store uniform kept saying, hold on, help is coming." But I wasn't sure I wanted to hold on. The pain was unbearable. And part of me, a small, tired part, thought maybe this was easier. Maybe this was better than facing another decade of loneliness, of being too sad for my own family to be around. Then the paramedics arrived. Strong hands lifted me onto a stretcher. An oxygen mask covered my face. The fluorescent lights of the store gave way to the bright afternoon sky as they wheeled me outside. The ambulance, the sirens, the bumpy ride that made the pain worse. The emergency room was chaotic. Bright lights, urgent voices, people moving with terrifying efficiency. They cut my clothes off, attached monitors. I started IVs. And then, through the haze of fear and pain and the very real possibility that I was about to die, I heard a voice. Calm, steady, absolutely certain. "Penny, stay with me. You're going to be okay. I've got you." I tried to focus on the face above me, but everything was blurry. All I could make out were kind eyes and the sense of complete competence. His hands moved quickly but carefully, giving orders to the team around him. "Penny, I need you to listen to my voice. I know you're scared. I know it hurts. But I promise you, we're going to get through this together. You're not alone. Do you understand?" I managed the smallest nod. "Good. That's good, Penny. You're doing great. Just stay with me." I don't remember much else about that day. The details dissolved into fragments: the fluorescent lights, the cold, the sounds of machines beeping, the feeling of being rushed down a hallway. But I remember his voice, that steady, certain voice, cutting through my panic like a lighthouse beam through fog. And I remember one clear thought just before they put me under for surgery. I didn't want to die. Despite everything, despite the loneliness, despite feeling invisible in my own family, despite years of merely existing rather than living, I wanted to survive. I wanted another chance. Triple bypass surgery? That's what it took to save my life. 3 of my arteries were blocked. My surgeon told me later, during one of the follow-up appointments, that if I'd arrived at the hospital 10 minutes later, I probably wouldn't have made it. 10 minutes between life and death. The recovery was long and painful and humbling. 6 weeks before I could climb stairs without stopping to catch my breath. 3 months before I could carry my own groceries. Learning to listen to my body, to rest when I needed to rest, to accept that I wasn't the same person I'd been before. Jessica visited me in the hospital. Once. She brought Emma and Lucas, who stood awkwardly at the foot of my bed, clearly uncomfortable seeing their grandmother with tubes and wires attached to her. "The kids wanted to see you," Jessica said, though Emma and Lucas looked more frightened than eager. "We can't stay long. It's a lot for them." They left after 15 minutes, but something shifted in me during those months of recovery. Maybe it was coming so close to dying. Maybe it was having so much time alone with my thoughts. Maybe it was the physical therapy sessions where I had to relearn my own strength. Whatever it was, I learned something important. I was stronger than I thought, more resilient than I'd given myself credit for. And I was tired, so tired, of making myself small to make other people comfortable. I was tired of apologizing for my sadness, tired of pretending I didn't need anyone, tired of believing that at 68, my story was already over. And then, 6 months ago, everything changed again. There was a charity event at St. Catherine's Hospital, the same hospital where I'd had my surgery. They invited former heart patients to share their recovery stories. I almost didn't go. I'd been out of the hospital for over a year by then, and I wasn't sure I had anything meaningful to say. But something pushed me to attend. Maybe curiosity, maybe the desire to be around people, maybe just the need to prove to myself that I could. I gave my little speech to the small audience. Nothing profound, just a simple thank you to the medical team that saved my life. A few words about learning to appreciate each day. The kind of thing people expect to hear at these events. When I finished and stepped off the small stage set up in the hospital conference room, a man approached me. He was tall, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners and an easy smile. He wore jeans and a casual button-down shirt. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that would make you look twice if you passed him on the street. But when he spoke, my heart skipped a beat. "Penny? Penny Foster?" That voice. I knew that voice. "Yes?" I said, confusion clear on my face. "I'm Jay," he said, extending his hand. "We met before. I work here at the hospital. I just wanted to say how glad I am to see you doing so well." His handshake was firm, but gentle. And as our hands touched, something clicked. That voice. Those kind eyes. The absolute calm. This was the man who'd saved my life. We talked for hours. He told me he'd married before, but he lost his wife in a fatal accident, that ever since then he'd focused on his career and sometimes wondered if he'd missed his chance at real connection. I told him about Thomas, my loneliness, and how much I missed Emma and Lucas. He listened, really listened. When the event ended, Jay asked if he could take me to coffee. I said yes, without hesitation. One coffee turned into two. Then we walked in the park. Dinners at quiet restaurants. Jay never talked much about his specific work, just that he worked at the hospital. It didn't matter to me what his job title was. He saw me. Not Penny, the sad widow. Just me. 3 weeks ago, Jay took me to our favourite park bench overlooking the pond. "Penny," he said, taking my hand, "I've waited my whole life to find someone like you. Someone who understands that life is precious, because it's fragile." He pulled out a small box with a simple diamond ring inside. "Will you marry me?" I said yes, through tears of joy I hadn't cried in 15 years. And that's how I ended up in my living room 2 days later, telling Jessica and Brad I was getting married. Which brings us back to where this story really begins. "You've got to be kidding me, Mum!" Jessica, my daughter, shouted mockingly. "You're embarrassing yourself, Mum," Jessica said, her voice rising. "My 68-year-old mother is getting married to some random man? It's humiliating." "Humiliating for who?" I asked quietly. "For me or for you?" Brad stood up, crossing his arms. "Let's be realistic, Penny. You're a retired teacher with a modest pension and small house. And suddenly some guy wants to marry you? He's after your money. That modest teacher's pension. Perfect target for a con artist." "You don't know him," I whispered. "We don't need to know him," Jessica snapped. "You're vulnerable. This is textbook manipulation." Brad nodded. "He's probably some blue-collar guy who can't believe his luck. He'll clean you out and disappear." "Stop it," I said, my voice shaking. "His name is Jay. He's kind and patient, and he loves me." Jessica laughed. "Love you? Mum, wake up. Men like that see an opportunity and take it." "We're not going to meet him," Jessica interrupted sharply. "And neither are Emma and Lucas." My heart stopped. "What?" "You heard me. I'm not letting my children witness this disaster. They're not coming to any wedding." That hurt more than everything else combined. The thought of getting married without Emma and Lucas there felt like someone had squeezed my damaged heart. "Jessica, please," I whispered. "They're my grandchildren. Don't punish them for my choices." "I'm not punishing them. I'm protecting them from watching their grandmother make a fool of herself." "You don't even know him," I said desperately. "His name is Jay, and he's kind, and he loves me. If you would just meet him." "We don't need to know him," Jessica snapped. "We can see exactly what this is. Some opportunist saw a lonely old woman and decided to take advantage." "The truth?" I asked quietly. "That you're desperate," she said, the word hanging like poison. "Desperate to not be alone, desperate to feel young again, and he's using that desperation to manipulate you." I looked at my daughter, the woman I'd raised, the woman who was now telling me I wasn't worthy of being loved. "What will people think?" Jessica continued. "What will they say when they hear sweet Penny Foster got scammed?" "I don't care what people think," I said with surprising strength. "If you go through with this ridiculous wedding, don't expect us to celebrate with you. And the kids aren't coming either. I absolutely won't allow it." Something rose up inside me, the same strength that had gotten me through Thomas's death. through my heart attack recovery, the realization that I'd spent 15 years making myself smaller to make other people comfortable. And I was done. If you've ever been judged for following your heart, if you've ever had someone tell you that you don't deserve a second chance at happiness, subscribe to this channel right now. Because what happens next, what my daughter discovers about the man she's mocking, will change everything. I straightened my shoulders. The wedding is in 2 weeks, Saturday, October 14th, at 2 o'clock at St. Andrew's Church. You're all invited. I hope you'll come. Because despite everything you've just said, you're still my daughter, and they're still my grandchildren. And I want you there on one of the happiest days of my life. Brad muttered, "Don't hold your breath." Jessica's expression hardened. "Maybe this will teach you that some chapters are meant to stay closed, Mum. Trying to force a new beginning at your age. It's just sad." She grabbed her purse. Brad followed her to the door. Jessica paused in the doorway. "When this falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to me. We warned you." The door closed with a soft click. I stood alone in my living room, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. But along with the hurt, I felt something unexpected. Resolve. Because Jessica and Brad had gotten one thing absolutely wrong. They assumed that a 68-year-old widow couldn't possibly be worthy of genuine love. Have you ever been underestimated by the people closest to you? Have you ever had someone dismiss your happiness because it didn't fit their expectations? Tell me your story in the comments, because you're not alone. Because what Jessica and Brad didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that in 2 weeks, when Jay Patton stood beside me at that altar, their smug certainty would crumble into dust. If only they knew who he really was. That night, after Jessica and Brad left, I sat alone in my bedroom, staring at my engagement ring. The diamond caught the lamplight, simple but beautiful. But as I sat there in the silence, doubt crept in like cold fog. What if they were right? What if my loneliness had made me blind? What if Jay really was using me? I thought about Emma and Lucas. Would I lose them over this? Would my choice to marry Jay mean I'd never see my grandchildren again? I remembered Lucas's 8th birthday party 3 months ago, the one I hadn't been invited to. Jessica had been firm. "Mum, it's family only. You're not ready to be around normal, happy families yet." Normal, happy families. As if I was somehow defective. Now I was risking losing even those occasional visits. For what? For a man I'd known for 6 months? But then I remembered 18 months ago, the emergency room. The fear of pain tore through my chest. Through the haze of pain and panic, I'd heard a voice. Calm, steady, absolutely certain. "Penny, stay with me. You're going to be okay." I barely remembered his face, but I remembered his hands, steady and sure. And I remembered his voice, the same voice that had asked me to marry him 6 months ago. I looked down at my ring, at the symbol of a man who saw me, really saw me, when my own family seemed to look right through me. No, Jessica was wrong. I wasn't being foolish. I was choosing to live. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Small ceremony at St. Andrew's Church. Some teaching colleagues, neighbours, book club friends. Jay invited a handful of hospital co-workers. I bought a simple cream-coloured dress. I was 68 years old, and I was proud of every year I'd lived. I sent Jessica an invitation with a note for Emma and Lucas. Jessica never responded. The morning of the wedding arrived. I got ready slowly, fastening the pearls Thomas had given me for our 20th anniversary. Something old. At the church, as I adjusted my dress one final time, I heard voices in the hallway, children's voices. My heart leaped. Emma and Lucas were there. Emma in a pretty blue dress, Lucas in a button-down and tie. They came. They actually came. Grandma? Emma broke free from Jessica's grip and threw her arms around me. You look so pretty. Lucas followed. Grandma? Are we really getting a Grandpa Jay? Tears filled my eyes. I knelt and hugged them both. Yes, sweetheart. Yes, you are. But then Jessica's voice cut through. Kids, go sit down. Now. Jessica and Brad stood there in dark clothes that looked more appropriate for a funeral. They hadn't come to celebrate. They'd come to watch what they expected would be my humiliation. Jessica whispered as she passed. I can't believe you're actually doing this. Brad muttered. Give it 6 months. He'll clean you out and disappear. Emma looked confused. Lucas looked sad. My heart broke a little. But then I saw Jay waiting at the altar. He smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had captured my attention 6 months ago. My resolve strengthened. The music began. I walked down the aisle alone. I wasn't being given away. I was choosing. Emma and Lucas sat between Jessica and Brad. Emma waved. Lucas gave me a small smile. Behind them, Jessica and Brad exchanged looks, counting down the minutes until this disaster unfolded. I kept my eyes on Jay. As I reached the altar and took his hands, he whispered, You look beautiful, Penny. So do you, I whispered back. Simple vows. Promises spoken quietly but firmly. I heard a scoff from the second row, but I didn't care. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife. Jay kissed me gently. My friends applauded. Emma clapped enthusiastically until Jessica shushed her. We were married. The reception was held in the church hall. Punch and cake. Simple decorations. Jessica and Brad stood near the exit. Emma and Lucas sat at a table, uncertain if they were allowed to enjoy themselves. I led them to the cake table. Brad was checking his phone, probably researching Jay. Jay knelt to Emma and Lucas's level. Hi there, I'm Jay. Your grandmother has told me so much about you. Emma studied him. Are you really going to be our grandpa? If that's okay with you, Jay said gently. Lucas asked, Do you know how to play catch? I do, Jay said. I'd love to play catch with you sometime. Jessica appeared. That won't be necessary. Kids, come sit down. But before they could move, one of Jay's colleagues approached, an older woman with kind eyes and grey hair. Penny, congratulations again. And you must be Penny's daughter. She turned to Jessica. You must be so proud of your mother. Marrying Dr. Patton, he's an incredible man. The words hung in the air. Dr. Patton. Jessica's face shifted. Doctor? If you're watching this and thinking about your own second chances, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what's about to unfold will show you exactly why standing firm in your truth matters. Emma tugged Jessica's sleeve. Mommy? Grandpa Jay is a doctor? The woman looked confused. Oh, I'm sorry. I assumed you knew. Dr. Jay Patton. He's the chief of cardiac surgery at St. Catherine's Hospital. He's been there for almost 20 years. The colour drained from Jessica's face. Brad's hand, holding his phone, froze in mid-air. Have you ever had to choose your happiness over someone else's approval? Drop a comment below and tell me about it. Because at that moment, everything they thought they knew began to crumble. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. Brad's phone nearly slipped from his hand. Even Emma and Lucas seemed to sense that something monumental had just happened. Chief of cardiac surgery? Jessica repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The colleague, I later learned her name was Dr. Helen Morrison, nodded enthusiastically. Oh, yes. Dr. Patton is one of the most respected cardiac surgeons in the state. We're lucky to have him at St. Catherine's. Brad's fingers moved frantically across his phone screen. Watched his face change as he found what he was looking for. His smug certainty dissolved into something that looked like panic. Jay noticed the commotion and walked over to us. He placed a gentle hand on my back. "Is everything all right?" Dr. Morrison smiled at him. "I was just telling Penny's daughter how wonderful it is that you two found each other. It's quite romantic, actually." Jay looked at Jessica's pale face, then at Brad's shocked expression. Understanding dawned in his eyes. He took a deep breath. "I think," he said quietly, "that there's been some confusion. Perhaps I should have been more forthcoming earlier." He turned to the small crowd that had gathered. "If everyone could take their seats for just a moment, I'd like to say a few words." My heart pounded as we moved to the front of the reception hall. Jay helped me into a chair, then stood beside me, his hand still resting protectively on my shoulder. The room quieted. My teaching friends settled into their seats. Jay's hospital colleagues gathered closer. Jessica and Brad remained standing near the back, as if they might need to make a quick escape. Emma and Lucas sat down at the nearest table, their eyes wide with curiosity. Jay cleared his throat. He looked nervous. The first time I'd seen him anything less than completely composed. "Before I say anything else," he began, his voice carrying across the small hall, "I need to properly introduce myself. Penny's friends know me as Jay, but there's more to the story." He paused, glancing down at me. I nodded encouragingly, even though I wasn't entirely sure what he was about to say. "My full name is Dr. Jay Patton. I'm the Chief of Cardiac Surgery at St. Catherine's Hospital." A ripple went through the room. Some of my teaching friends gasped, others exchanged surprised glances. But the most dramatic reaction came from the back of the room. Jessica's face drained of all remaining colour. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Brad frantically pulled out his phone again, his fingers shaking as he typed. I could see him pulling up search results, his eyes growing wider with each passing second. Emma whispered loudly, "Wow, Grandma married a real doctor." Lucas tugged on Jessica's sleeve. "Mommy, that's so cool." But Jay wasn't finished. He took another deep breath, and when he continued, his voice was thick with emotion. 18 months ago, Penny was brought into my operating room. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was between scheduled surgeries when the emergency call came through. A woman in her late 60s, massive heart attack, multiple arterial blockages. Her heart was failing. The room fell completely silent. I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes as Jay described that day, the day I'd nearly died. "Emergency triple bypass surgery," Jay continued. "It was complicated. Touch and go for a while. I've performed thousands of surgeries over my 42 years career. I've saved countless lives. It's my job. It's what I do." He paused, and I saw his jaw tighten with emotion. But Penny's case, I'll never forget it. He looked down at me, his eyes shining. During her recovery, I did something I rarely do. I checked on her personally, multiple times. Not because there were complications. Her recovery was progressing well. But because, I don't know, something about her. During those visits, we talked. She told me about her 35 years as a second-grade teacher, about her late husband, Thomas, and how much she missed him, about her daughter, Jessica. He looked directly at Jessica as he said her name, about her beautiful grandchildren, Emma and Lucas. Emma beamed from her seat. Lucas sat up straighter, a shy smile on his face. She told me about the books she loved to read, about her small garden, about how much she missed being part of her grandchildren's lives. His voice dropped slightly. She told me how lonely she'd been, how she sometimes wondered if anyone would even notice if she disappeared. I heard Jessica make a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Her strength amazed me, Jay continued. Her grace under circumstances that would have broken most people. Her resilience. The way she worried more about inconveniencing the nurses than about her own recovery. The way she lit up whenever anyone mentioned her grandchildren. He squeezed my shoulder gently. When she was discharged, I thought about her often. I wondered how she was doing, if she was taking her medications, if she was following the cardiac rehabilitation program. That's not typical for me. I care about all my patients, but I don't usually think about them after they leave my care. But I thought about Penny. The room was so quiet, I could hear my own breathing. 6 months ago, there was a charity event at the hospital. Former heart patients were invited to share their recovery stories. I almost didn't attend. I had a full surgical schedule the next day. But something made me go. He smiled, a soft, private smile meant just for me. And there she was, standing on that little stage, telling her story, looking healthier than I'd seen her 18 months before, looking alive. When she finished speaking, I knew I had to talk to her, but not as Dr. Patton, not as the surgeon who'd saved her life. I wanted her to know me. Just Jay. Jessica was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Brad had lowered his phone, his expression stunned. So I approached her. We talked, and talked. For hours. I didn't tell her who I was right away. I wanted her to know me, the person, not the title, not the career, not the credentials. I wanted to know if what I'd felt during those hospital visits was real, or just some misplaced sense of professional pride in a successful surgery. It was real. He looked down at me, his eyes full of tenderness. I fell in love with her spirit, with her laugh. This wonderful, genuine laugh I'd never heard in the hospital, with her wisdom about life and loss and starting over, with her enormous capacity to love even when she felt forgotten by the people she loved most. His voice grew stronger. Penny isn't lucky to have found me. I'm blessed beyond measure to have found her. The applause started slowly. One of my teaching friends, then another, then Jay's hospital colleagues joined in. Soon the entire room was clapping, everyone except Jessica and Brad. Brad was staring at his phone screen like he couldn't believe what he was reading. I caught glimpses of headlines as he scrolled. Top 100 surgeons in America. Photos from medical conferences. Articles about groundbreaking cardiac procedures, awards, and accolades. He whispered to Jessica, showing her the screen. Her hands began to shake. One of my longtime teaching friends, Susan, stood up with a huge grin. "Penny, you never told us? Chief of Cardiac Surgery? That's incredible." I smiled softly, feeling Jay's hand still steady on my shoulder. I didn't know myself until recently. And honestly, it doesn't matter. I didn't fall in love with a resume. I fell in love with the man who made me laugh over coffee, who listened when I talked about my students, who sees me, really sees me, not as a patient or an old woman or someone to be pitied, but as someone worthy of love. Jay squeezed my hand, pride shining in his eyes. And then, suddenly, Emma broke free from Jessica's grip. She ran across the reception hall and threw her arms around both of us. "Grandma, this is so cool. You married someone who saves people's lives." Lucas followed close behind, more tentatively. "Grandma, can we visit you more now? Can Grandpa Jay really teach me to play catch? My voice cracked as I pulled them both close. I hope so, sweethearts. I hope so very much. Jessica moved slowly toward us. Her face was blotchy from crying, her mascara smeared. Brad followed a few steps behind, looking like he wished he could disappear through the floor. When Jessica reached us, she stopped a few feet away. Her mouth opened and closed several times before any words came out. Mom! Her voice broke. I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry. I was cruel. I was judgmental. I was wrong about everything. Brad stood behind her, shamefaced and silent, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I stood up slowly, still holding Emma's hand. Lucas pressed against Jay's side. Jessica, I said quietly, I forgive you. She let out a sob. But I need you to understand something, I continued. I would have married Jay if he worked at a grocery store, if he was a mechanic or a teacher or unemployed. His worth to me isn't in his title or his salary or his reputation. It's in how he treats me, how he sees me, how he loves me exactly as I am. Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. And I need you to understand something else. My voice grew firmer, keeping Emma and Lucas from me, telling me I was too sad to be around them, excluding me from birthdays and recitals and Sunday dinners. That hurt more than anything you said about Jay. That hurt more than being called desperate or foolish or naive. I know, Jessica whispered. I know, Mom. I was wrong about that too. The kids missed you so much. Lucas asked about you every single week. Emma cried after her piano recital because you weren't there. Emma nodded against my side. I did, Grandma. I really did. I'm so sorry, Jessica said again. I should have trusted you. I should have been happy for you. I should have seen that you were finally healing instead of trying to keep you stuck in grief because it was easier for me. That last part struck me, because it was easier for her, easier to have a sad, predictable mother than one who was moving forward with her life. Jay stepped forward, still holding Lucas's hand. Jessica, he said gently, what matters now isn't what was said before. What matters is what happens next. Penny loves you. She's told me countless stories about you growing up, about how proud she is of the mother you've become, and she adores Emma and Lucas. He knelt down to the children's level. And I would very much like to get to know my new grandchildren better, if that's all right with everyone. Lucas looked up at Jessica hopefully. Can we, Mom? Please? Jessica nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes. Yes, of course. She looked at me. Mum, can we start over? Can the kids spend next weekend with you and Jay, please? My heart felt like it might burst. We'd love that. Jay smiled. I make excellent pancakes. Lucas's eyes lit up. With chocolate chips? Jay laughed, that warm, genuine laugh I'd fallen in love with. Is there any other kind? Emma giggled. Lucas grinned. And for the first time in what felt like years, I saw my family whole again. The reception continued. The mood shifted from tense to joyful. Emma and Lucas stayed close to me and Jay for the rest of the evening, asking questions and telling stories, and simply being present in a way they hadn't been allowed to be for so long. If you're still watching this, if this story has touched something in your heart, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for happiness. Those second chances are real, that your worth doesn't diminish with time. As the evening wound down and guests started to leave, I found myself standing with Jay, Emma on one side and Lucas on the other. Jessica approached one more time. Mom, she said softly, I see you now. Really see you. Not as someone who needs to be managed or protected or kept separate from normal, happy families. I see you as someone who's brave enough to choose joy, even when everyone doubted you. And I'm so sorry I made you feel invisible. I embraced her, and this time it felt genuine, real, like we might actually be able to rebuild what had been broken. Later, as Jay and I prepared to leave for our simple honeymoon, just a weekend at a bed and breakfast 2 hours away, I took a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. For 15 years, I'd believed my story was over. After Thomas died, I thought I'd used up my chance at love. I let loneliness convince me that at 68, I wasn't allowed to want more. That happiness was for other people. Younger people. People whose lives hadn't been marked by loss. But I was wrong. 18 months ago, I was given a second chance at life. Literally. My heart stopped working, and Jay Patton put it back together. And 6 months ago, I was given a second chance at love. Not because of what Jay could give me or how he looked on paper, but because he saw me. Because he chose me. Because he taught me that I was still someone worth knowing, worth loving, worth choosing. Jay didn't save me because of who he is. He saved me because of who I am. Someone worth saving. And that's what I want you to understand, whoever you are watching this. Your worth doesn't diminish with age, with loss, with time. Love doesn't have an expiration date, and neither does your right to happiness. Sometimes the people who doubt you most are the ones who've forgotten how to dream themselves, who've become so comfortable with the status quo that any change feels threatening. Don't let anyone, not even family, not even people who claim to love you, convince you that your joy is foolish, that your second chance isn't real, that your story is over. Because somewhere out there, your second chapter is waiting. And it might just be the best one yet. Have you ever chosen happiness despite the doubters? Have you ever had to stand firm in your truth when everyone around you said you were wrong? Drop a comment below and tell me your story, because you're not alone, and your courage matters. As Jay and I drove away from the reception, Emma and Lucas waving enthusiastically from the church steps, Jessica's arm around both of them, I realized something profound. I hadn't just found love again. I'd found myself. The version of me that Thomas had loved. The version that had gotten lost somewhere in 15 years of grief and loneliness and trying to be small enough not to bother anyone. And that version of me? She was worthy of every good thing that came her way. Jay reached over and took my hand as we drove. Happy, Mrs. Patton? I smiled, watching the sun set over the familiar streets of my town, heading toward a future I'd never imagined possible. Happier than I ever thought I could be again. And I meant every word. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that second chances are real and that love has no age limit, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about dignity, resilience, and the courage to choose joy. And remember, your story isn't over, not by a long shot. Your second chapter is waiting, and it just might be the most beautiful one yet.